Way down upon the Wabash, such land was never known. If Adam had crossed over it, this soil he'd surely own. He'd think it was a garden he played in when a boy, and straight pronounced it Eden in the state of Illinois.
Illinois is a state full of richness, the richness of the past and the present, the richness of life. Join us now as we take you from the city and through Illinois to places where you can get away from the hustle and bustle and into Illinois Pastimes. Our first trip takes us to the Mississippi River, Illinois' western boundary, for a 2-day trip upriver from the Quad Cities area to historic Galena in northwest Illinois, and back again. Departure point is LeClaire, Iowa, Buffalo Bill Cody's hometown, where we boarded the Julia Belle Swain, an authentic Mississippi riverboat.
Like the riverboats of a century ago, the Julia Belle Swain is steam-powered and one of only 5 remaining authentic steamboats left in the United States. The big red paddle wheel and the hiss of the vintage steam engines makes you feel like you're back in the days when these boats were considered floating palaces.
With the boom of the steam whistle, the Julia Belle Swain starts her 66-mile trip upriver. It's time to settle into the rhythm of the river and just relax. When you get restless, there's always a trip to the pilot house for a visit with Captain John Vaughn, who has been steering this boat since he was 7, following in his father's footsteps.
My dad became a pilot the same reason Mark Twain wanted to. He saw it, and that's what he wanted to do, and by God, that's what he did.
I asked him if it was difficult to pilot the Julia Belle Swain.
To quote a kind of an old cliche is piloting's 95% boredom, 5% sheer terror. Even with as much progress as we've made, you know, the river's still the same. It just might be a little bit tamer than what it was. You might know where everything is now, but the river still does their own thing.
In spite of the warning, if you ask just right, anybody can get to steer for a while and let your presence be known by sounding the steam whistle. Then it's back to the basics, like eating. Dieters beware, the food is good and plentiful and always around. Oh well, dieting can begin tomorrow. The Julia Belle Swain is owned and operated by Captain Dennis Trone, who has been traveling the Mississippi for over 20 years, and he enjoys sharing his love of the river.
We like to tell the people about the river. We like to tell the people about the commerce on the river, the tremendous tonnage of agricultural products, manufactured products that are shipped on the river. We like to point out nature. And of course, we go by the towns, the sleepy little towns on the river, and people wave, and we wave back, and we play the steam piano for them. And it's like all these people on the river are neighbors.
As Captain Trone mentioned, along the way there are people who like to greet the Julia Belle Swain, whether from the shoreline or from their thoroughly modern rivercraft. The trip upriver takes about 9 hours, 7 hours back, and along the way, the beauty of Illinois on one side and Iowa on the other creates a timeless and mesmerizing scene. The Mississippi River has been a transportation route for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, and along the way you can see the many uses of the mighty Mississippi. As the lazy day goes on, you can enjoy the variety of entertainment provided for the trip by the likes of the roving bluegrass band, singing flappers, and the wonderful steam piano, the calliope. One of the big events of the day is when you have to go through the locks and dams that regulate the flow of the river. Later in the day, you meet up with sister ship, the Twilight, going back to LeClaire, Iowa, where you'll be headed tomorrow. The exchange of a few personnel takes place quickly, and before you know it, the other ship is on its way, with some fanfare, of course. As you get closer to Galena, you begin to notice a change in the terrain. That's because this part of Illinois never got touched by glaciers, and consequently, it never got flattened out like the rest of the state. The end of the day means boarding a ferry that takes you to the Chestnut Mountain Resort just 8 miles south of Galena. Once on land, you get a choice of riding the bus up the hill or taking the more scenic route in the ski lift. The last thing you might want to catch is the most spectacular sunset over the mighty Mississippi. The next day finds you in Galena for a quick visit.
Galena is a place that seems to have stood still in time, but the truth is it is as lively as it once was over 100 years ago when it was bigger than Chicago.
While there's more to see in Galena than the cruise allows, you do get a taste of this historic Illinois town. And if you want to spend more time, you can easily make the trip from Chicago in about 2.5 hours. And it's definitely worth it for the architecture alone. A visit to the Historical Museum tells you that Galena was a lead mining town in its heyday, and the name Galena actually means lead sulfite.
If you pick up an antique or a handicraft here, there's something else you might consider. Over at the Galena Historical Museum, you can purchase for a small amount a little bit of Galena to take home with you.
The other thing you notice at the museum is the profusion of portraits of General Ulysses S. Grant, including the famous Thomas Nast painting of Lee surrendering to Grant. If you walk from the museum down one of the many stairways in town, you might find yourself at the Toy Soldier Collection shop, where you'll see someone who bears a startling resemblance to, that's right, General Grant. It's really Paul LaGreco, who spends every day as the General and doesn't mind talking to visitors. You can even visit and tour the General's home if you want to know more about him.
One of the attractions is like Grant's home. Grant lived here for a short period of time before the war and a little bit after the war. You know, and this is not a one-day town. You can't come here in one day unless you just want to walk up Main Street and back. You've got to go on the other streets. You got to hit the museums, some of the homes that are open, and nothing else. Just drive around the countryside. That's the pretty part. And you know, my wife and I still do that. We drive around out in the country.
It's almost time to leave Galena, but before we do, here's a scene that you'll never find in Chicago.